Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is John Leonard. I'm chairman of the Milton Board of Appeals. I'm here with Ted Daber and Kathleen O'Donnell, board members, for a continued hearing on the application of Falcone Properties LLC. The application is dated September 11th, 2023, and is seeking a use variance in order to allow a commercial parking area to the rear portion of the present residential building lot at 7.7-9 Pleasant Street at 672 Randolph Avenue in Milton, Massachusetts. Our last hearing on this matter was on November 6, 2023, and was continued to this date to allow the applicant to continue proceedings before the Milton Planning Board and to get the necessary permits from the planning board in order to proceed with the application before the Board of Appeals. The applicant is represented by attorney Marion McEtrick. So welcome aboard again, Mrs. McEtrick.
Thank you.
And I understand that your last hearing before the planning board was, I believe, on
January 11th.
And there were some technical issues that came up with the notice of the hearing. So why don't we proceed with you can give us a brief explanation of the status of the planning board matter, and perhaps what additional information you presented to the planning board. And we'll hear from any people who are present who want to be heard on this abbreviated hearing. And then we'll continue this hearing to a date subsequent to the next planning board meeting, which is February 8th, which will give you time to wrap up the planning board situation, secure permitting from the planning board, and have a final hearing before the Board of Appeals. So with that as a rather long preamble, welcome back to the Board of Appeals, and we're happy to hear from you.
Thank you. I'm Marion McEtrick, and I represent the applicant for this application to the Board of Appeals. And that's generally an accurate description of what's been going on. We were scheduled to meet with the Milton Planning Board to further discuss the site plan on December 14th, and that followed a site walk with 4 of the 5 planning board members on December 2nd, at which several of the neighbors were present, including Maya and Emma Trung of 678 Randolph Ave, Ryan Ballard, Caitlin Manning of 688 Randolph Ave, and Nick Sesso, who is the father of Caitlin Manning. And at that site walk, we went over a modified site plan that had been prepared based on previous comments before the planning board. And we were asked to make a few other changes to the plan, which we did do. That plan was submitted to the planning board timely, but then the planning board failed to post its December 14th hearing. And as a result of that, they have to re-advertise and set a new date. And the new date was January 11th. So we have met with the planning board again, but only several days ago. And we now have a plan that has had a lot of details ironed out. Mostly it's the same plan that I submitted to you. So I'm going to review the changes that are in that plan and mention any small additional changes that are going to be put in that plan tonight, just to kind of give you an idea of where things stand. The only other thing we're waiting for is a report from the engineering department for the town of Milton. They are reviewing the stormwater plan. We don't have a report back yet, but we do expect to be getting that. That's something that the planning board would prefer to have before they make a decision, but we'll see how the timing works out on that. So the principal changes that we've made are that we moved the orientation of this parking area. It was extending straight out into the lot, across the top of the lot, and now the parking area has been turned, and one side of it is running along the side of the existing parking area at 7 to 9 Pleasant Street. That was suggested by a planning board member at a meeting. with them. We have changed the trees so that we're now providing a mix of evergreens, arborvitaes, but a type of arborvitae that's not susceptible to drought and that's not as likely to be eaten by deer. So it's a particular variant of arborvitae. And then red maples. Those are all shown on the plans that we sent to you at the beginning of December. And they're going to be arborvitae will be in a row in the dividing area between the adjacent lots and this parking area, and then the red maples will be in back of the arborvitae to make a more attractive appearance. We've done a couple of other things. At that meeting, we agreed to install, well, we'd already agreed to install a wood fence like the one that's already there. So the fence around this new parking area would be the same as the fence that's at the 7 to 9 Pleasant Street lot. And we are going to make it 6 feet high and then have 2 feet of lattice. So that will be a little bit higher. That will help to obstruct the view. And then when we met on site, we agreed that the arborvitae, when they're planted, will be 10 to 12 feet high, so that at their planted height, they'll be higher than the height of the fence. And those two things together will create a much better screen for any view of the parking area. We also agreed to install the same lighting in this parking area that's in the existing parking lot. And those are residential style lots that are attached on the inside of the posts in the parking area. So they're not particularly visible and they're more attractive. We've made just a couple of small tweaks in this plan, and we've ordered a new photometric plan for you and for the planning board. And we are waiting to get that final photometric plan. So you can expect to see that coming well as soon as possible in the next week or so. And we expect that that plan will show no lighting overspill onto adjacent properties. And while we were on the site, we talked about the design for the stormwater structures. And our engineer explained that the stormwater flow will go into new stormwater structures underground, and then will be directed back into storm drains that are under the existing parking area behind Bent's. So the stormwater flow from this upper part of the lot, which is at a height, is now going to be directed back towards the existing parking area. There's no stormwater structures on this lot right now, so stormwater just comes down the hill and just pours right down towards Route 28. So finally, at the meeting last week with the planning board, there were just a couple of other requests that were submitted to us. One was that we continue the wood fence around the corner at the end closest to the neighbor's lot. That's going to be shown on a revised plan that you'll be getting in the next few days. The planning board asked for that. And they also asked for a clearer list of the plantings and exactly where they're going to be placed. One of the neighbors, Ryan Ballard, asked us to move the red maples back a little bit from the edge because he just doesn't want as much of the leaf fall to fall onto his property. So that's been done. I haven't seen it yet, but the engineer has put that on the plan, and we'll be sending that along to you as a final submission and along to the planning board. So with this relocation of the additional parking area, we've reduced the size of the overall parking. There will be only 15 spaces in this new area, and then you'll have to remove spaces in the existing parking lot to create the entrances coming in here. And we're removing the tandem parking in the back and just making it into 2 parking spaces in the existing lot. So the result is there's a net increase of 10 parking spaces with the addition of this new parking area. And these 10 spaces will provide more off-street parking for visitors to the cafe and commercial clients. It'll reduce the pressure, particularly on the 5 residential tenant parking spaces during the day. Those tenants, some of them will come back during the day and find their spaces are occupied because there just isn't anywhere else to park in back of this building. Now, at its closest point to the Trung property, the parking area is set back 30.9 feet compared to the 20 feet it was set back in the original plan. So we've increased the setback from the Trung property. We are showing in this new plan an area for snow storage at the rear in the wooded area. That's the area that doesn't have any fence because it doesn't face any neighboring residences. And we've also removed a curb or a berm at the back there so that it will be easy to push snow back in that direction. There are a lot of deciduous trees in that area. Some of them are small, but there are a few big ones. So the best we thought, and planning board seemed to agree with this at the site walk, that this small area should be left so that it's available for snow storage, and that we don't want to have to take down any more large trees in the back of this lot. Let's see. Okay, so that's kind of a summary of the changes that we've agreed to. You're still waiting for, and so is the planning board, for a new photometric plan for this new lighting in the parking area and this new orientation of the parking. Now, Greg Morse is here tonight, and Greg is going to share screens if he can do that, if you'll let him do that.
Oh, that'd be great. That'd be very helpful.
And then I think maybe he'll go through the plan page by page again quickly. I know I've summarized the changes, but he can point them out to you and comments that he feels would be helpful.
Great. Oh, Mr. Morse.
While he's doing that shared screen, they just want to reiterate that we are not proposing any increase or change to the uses in the Bent building. The only purpose of this parking plan is to improve the parking for the uses that exist. That's the 5 tenants, the 5 apartments, the commercial space, and the cafe and the catering business. Okay. So this is the kind of the key plan. This is the new parking plan, most updated. And it shows you can see the green arborvitae surrounding the left side of the parking area, the 15 parking spaces within the lot, and then there are 3 trees. That's the entrance, and then the 3 trees in the back here are the red maples. And on this plan, which we haven't revised yet to this extent, those maples are going to be moved a little bit further, a little closer to the parking area. As close as will still provide for good growth for both types of trees. Let's see. I guess you should just note, and this is not different from the plan that I showed you several months ago, that quite a number of parking spaces have to be removed to create the entrance to this parking area. So those are all tenant spaces. The 5 tenant spaces are all being moved into the new parking lot. And then over on the right, in the rear of the existing parking area, you now see 3 parking spaces marked with E's instead of the tandem parking that we had there before. Let's see. It's a little hard to see, but there's a note showing the snow storage area. And that's the part of this parking area that doesn't have a fence. So, and it's not going to have a big curb either, because we want to make it easy to push snow back into that area. Let's see. We also, just for your information, if you look at the red dotted line on this plan, it's kind of faint. That is the previously proposed parking layout. So you can see that this is a fairly significant change from that layout. I guess the main purpose was to get the corner further away from the neighbor's property. Does anybody have questions about this site plan, this part of the site plan? We have some other pages we can talk about as well.
Why don't you hold on 1 second? Ms. O'Donnell, do you have any questions of Mrs. McGetrick on this plan?
No, actually, I looked at that plan. I also watched the video of the planning board meeting. And so I looked at it, and I appreciate the fact that this parking has shifted farther away from the abutters. But no, I had taken a look at that and watched the planning board presentation this afternoon.
Great. Mr. Daber, do you have any questions?
Not at this time, thanks. Not on this plan, no, thanks.
Thank you. Marion, why don't you proceed with the rest of
Okay, Greg, do you want to show us the drainage, the page that has the drainage plans, and maybe explain that again? Or explain it better. think this is it.
Sure.
isn't it?
This is the drainage plan. For the record, Gregory Morse, registered engineer, Morse Engineering. What we tried to do with this drainage plan is we looked at the existing site drainage pattern, which generally this site drains from the right side of the screen here towards the left-hand side of the screen. So what we're doing with this parking lot is we're taking all of the water that's within that parking lot surface and coming onto that parking lot surface. We've graded it in a fashion that directs it to 2 catch basins. Those catch basins are right here, essentially at the entrance to the new parking lot. Those 2 catch basins are what we refer to as deep sump hooded catch basins. So they provide an area for any sediment that's within the stormwater to settle out within the basin itself and to act as a gas and oil trap. And then we're directing the water into a series of subsurface leaching chambers right here. The leaching chambers are below the ground surface. They will take the stormwater and direct it back into the soil. We had conducted some soil tests at the site, to confirm the soils there and the infiltration rates. We had done a drainage analysis of the pre-development versus the post-development conditions to document that during the 210 and 100-year storm events, we are not increasing the runoff off of this site. So we have submitted those to the DPW and the town's engineer for their review at this point.
Okay, I just have to take a quick look myself to see if there's other pages I wanted you to comment on. No, there's a detail page talking about the stormwater structures. I don't know if anyone has an interest in that. Existing conditions page. I don't have any requests for further comments. Greg, anything else you can think of?
The only piece that I wanted to point out on the site layout plan that we didn't talk about in super detail was the location of this proposed fence that we've talked about. The parking lot behind the Bent's building right now is surrounded by a wooden fence. And Marion did state we are putting new fencing. This is the location of that new fencing. So the new fencing would go between the parking lot and between the abutting residential properties. It's a 6-foot high solid wood fence, and then on top of the 6-foot portion of the fence, there is a 2-foot decorative lattice on the top. It essentially matches the fence that's already existing at the Bent's factory, but that's the location of that fence. The planning board had requested at their meeting last week that we extend the end of it here by approximately another 5 feet. So that's one of the revisions we're making at their request, is that extension at the end of the fence location. Other than that, I think Marion touched on everything that I had on my list, so I can leave this up on the screen if the board wants, or I can take it down, whichever you prefer.
Yeah, why don't you leave it there for 1 second and let me just ask Ms. O'Donnell, do you have any questions of Mr. Morse?
No, I do not.
Mr. Neighbor?
Excuse me. Ms. McKettrick, you said that the town of Milton Engineering Department is going to be issuing a report on the stormwater.
Usually what they do,
Commissioner?
this isn't a plan that, requires the full stormwater review process. Sometimes there's a peer review with that and everything. But we always send it to the engineering department, and what we expect to get back from them is either saying the following things need to be adjusted or we have questions, or sometimes even the first letter says we reviewed the plan, it's satisfactory, it shows the appropriate control of stormwater runoff onto neighboring properties. We haven't received that yet. I believe the town engineer has moved from Milton, and so a staff engineer now is reviewing the plan, but there's been a delay in looking at it. Not that there's anything problematic, but just that they hadn't gotten to it yet. So we will be expecting to get a letter back, and as soon as possible. About 2 weeks ago, a week and a half ago, the planning director sent it again, and a new engineer was assigned to review it.
Mhm. Do you have any sense of, I see the outline of the prior, from the prior plan of where the parking lot was gonna be. Is this, proposed lot then, smaller in area than the prior one?
It is. This is 4,900 square feet. I don't have the number. I know the other lot was larger because there were more spaces.
Mhm.
This
So it
is-
is, I mean, do you contemplate there would be a plan that would show the area and dimensions like this as a separate lot on that property? That for purposes of identifying it and what the commercial area would be?
Ah, okay. This is
I mean,
what we
if
call a.
if it's setting out a separate,
Well,
only
we're
a separate
proposing
part of
we're
it
not
as a
proposing
commercial area.
separate lot. Excuse me, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. No, yeah, that it would be like a separate lot. I don't mean necessarily for, well, a separate lot so that, because that's the only portion of that property that's commercial. So something that
Right.
would
We're not
designate.
subdividing the lot, but what you're saying is you want to be very clear about what area this lot is being used for. This is a commercial use, parking for commercial use.
Right, with
And
dimensions
it's not a
and,
separate lot, but I think after just discussing this a bit with the Board of Appeals, we probably can understand what you're looking for, but I think what you're looking for is a perimeter line. You know, basically it would be where the fence is. And then it would continue where there is no fence, sort of at the same distance, but that would be the perimeter line coming all the way around back to the existing parking lot. Would you agree with that or not?
Mr. Chair, do you understand what I'm
I
saying?
think I do, but
I mean, if it were going to be identified, for example, in a decision, I would think we'd have to have something to clearly identify the portion that was being talked about. And this plan, I don't think does it really.
The application actually is for what you'd call mixed use for this lot, because it's going to continue to be a residential lot with a residential use. That's the residential structure in front, which has its own driveway. And then there's going to be commercial use of a portion of the lot for this parking area. So usually, the site plan is the identification of the area that's where change is proposed. But I have no problem with the idea of creating a line on the plan that surrounds that area. But it would just be another line. I think it would be just outside the fence line. I don't think I don't see any reason why the landscaping would be commercial per se. It's certainly being installed to provide further protection. I mean, it's entirely up to you how you would want me to treat that as a perimeter on the plan. The reason we don't create a line like that normally on an application like this is that we're not doing a subdivision, and we don't want to create the appearance of a subdivision where there are now two lots. That would be a whole different process.
Yeah.
And
I haven't seen one like this. To be honest.
no,
with
it's
so-
unusual. I agree, and I think your
So,
question.
so that's, but I do know that, there should, I think, but I'm, I mean, Ms. O'Donnell and Mr. Leonard, if I'm wrong or if you disagree with me, I think there has to be some specificity to what is being designated for parking use for commercial purposes, relating to the other parcel. I would think.
Well,
Yeah,
I think
I mean, it's a variance only with respect to a certain portion of the property, and I think that has to be identifiable by dimensions and area and whatever, but.
Well, I think we could draft the decision to say that the commercial use applies to the parking area. I think it would be helpful. I agree, Ted, that it would be helpful to have some sort of zone line. that says that this is the area of the residential lot that's got them, it's a mixed use. I mean, that's what you're trying to do with this variance is allow two uses on one lot. And so I think it makes sense rather than sort of make it look like we're rezoning the entire residential parcel, 672, that we're setting aside just this area where the parking is. And I think we can describe it in the permit that way. Obviously, we don't want a subdivision, and that's not really what we're looking for. But I think some, sort of dotted line that, sort of follows the fence or something like that, and just say with a little tag on it that says that that's the commercial zone, I think would be very helpful for future people reading the plan.
Yeah, it could be, commercial parking use line, or something like that.
I think it should have dimensions and area.
I don't
Yes.
think it needs to.
Well, you could, I mean, we can give you that. I can tell you already that the area is 4,900 square feet. And well, it's an irregular shape and all that, so, I mean, yeah, whatever.
We could generally describe it in the decision as 49 square feet plus or 4,900 square feet plus or minus, whatever, and that would help with the description.
Greg, I
Right.
know you're listening to this, so can you see a way to do this type of line and identify it appropriately?
Yeah, I mean, we certainly could draw a line. I think it was just suggested, probably just outside the fence line, kind of documenting that location. We could put some dimensions on it. That's not a problem. Yeah, I mean, we can quantify the area of the parking lot, the number of spaces in the parking lot. This plan is to scale, and while it doesn't say 4,900 square feet on this parking lot, it does have the width of all the parking spaces. It has the width of the aisles. We could certainly add an overall length and width to this and add a little bit more dimensioning to this plan as well. I understand what you're requesting.
And then you could use that in your decision.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does that sound helpful, Ted?
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of what I had in mind that, so it sounds like Mr. Morse understands and Ms. McKettrick as well.
Okay.
Do you understand, John?
I do.
You
No,
think-
that's fine.
Yeah, okay.
So, Marion, well, let me do this. Is there any member of the public who's present at this hearing who has a question on these plans or the status of the project as Mrs. McKettrick has described it? Okay, I don't hear any. So, Marion, where are you in terms of approximately when you'll have these plans revised and your additional filings with the board? And can you give us a reasonable estimate if your next hearing with the planning board is on February 8th?
Right. We
Approximately.
would want to have, we'll do it earlier, but we'd want to have all the revisions to the site plan, including the ones you've requested tonight. And Greg can correct me if I'm being unrealistic, but I would say that we could do these within a week. Is that realistic, Greg? Can you do that?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so
Yep.
we've done most of them, and this part that you've added, I think they can do pretty
Yeah.
promptly. We're waiting for the photometric plan, so we have the site plan updated within a week. I expect to get the photometric plan within the same schedule, and those will be to you well before we meet on February 8th with the planning board. They'll also be with the planning board, will also have the updated plans. I expect that February 8th meeting to be our last meeting with the planning board. Sometimes they have a draft decision at that meeting. Sometimes they might ask the applicant's attorney to draft something or provide, an outline or something like that. I really don't know because I haven't discussed that with them yet. But in the interest of completing your process, I would say after we meet on the 8th, we will know if the site plan is going to be approved. And hopefully it would be great if we even had a decision at that point. So if you could set a final meeting date after February 8th, but not too long after, so that you can finish this process for the purposes of your board, I think that would be very helpful. I realize that you can't really make a decision without knowing that the site plan has been approved.
Right.
The site plan, if it is approved, is going to be approved with a condition that the Board of Appeals has to approve the required relief. So the two things are really happening together. But that's the schedule I suggest. We get our revised documents into you within a week. I'll update you on the status of stormwater review with the town. And we have our next meeting with the planning board on February 8th. So we would ask that you schedule a meeting as soon as you can after that date.
Okay, would you like to give yourself a couple of weeks breathing room to?
Sure. It's
Whatever.
really more, for your convenience. I mean, we're not in a huge rush, but I didn't want to drag this process out. I'm sorry that it had to be delayed and we didn't get the December hearing with the planning board, because I know you have a lot of other work.
So if we selected something at the end of February, that the last week in February, would that make sense? Ted, do you have general availability at the end of February or early March?
Yeah, I'm better in February, March, and on a committee that's gonna be meeting a lot in March, so. February would be better for me, but
Is school vacation week an issue for anybody? Because otherwise it could be February 22nd.
Well,
I'm sorry, February
maybe
21st,
the
maybe.
neighbors, and I'd prefer to avoid that week if you
You
don't
want to
mind.
avoid it? Okay. Then it could be the last week in February. That would be Wednesday, the 28th, or Thursday, 29th, Tuesday, the 27th.
I would prefer Tuesday. I will be in New York for an annual meeting on the 29th.
Okay.
Rehearsals on 28th, so Tuesday, the 27th would be best for me.
How about you, Ted? The 27th? Does that work?
it's open now, yep. Yep,
Great. It looks good for me as well. So, Mr. Morse, is that good for you, the 27th?
Yes, it is.
Okay, great.
Terrific. Good.
So if there's no other matters to come before the board,
Mr. Leonard, I do see one person with their hand raised in the
Okay.
attendance.
whom may that be?
That would be one Nick Sesso.
Okay. Mr. Sesso, are you there?
I just gave him permission to speak.
Yes, I'm here.
Good, Mr. Sesso, why don't you tell us your address, sir?
I'm caught, my family lives at 688 Randolph Ave. And I appreciate your attention to detail if this project should happen. But we're talking about a man and a company who bought a building and expanded all aspects of many businesses within that building with the help of this board. Now comes the time that he wants to expand once again, even though he says he is not. And he has all kinds of reasons why you should let it happen. The real question that I have is this board going to set the precedent that if you want to expand your business, just force out the neighbors, buy their home, and expand onto that backyard? Who cares if it's residential? Who cares forcing your ambition onto more neighbors? This is the message that you were sent.
With all due respect, we're not at that stage of the hearing where we want final arguments. If you have any questions about the plans that Mrs. McEtrick has offered, that'd be great. The next hearing, when we conclude the evidence, you'll have full opportunity to be heard and make your closing argument based upon the evidence as presented. But right at the present time, if you have questions about the plans that have been shown, or Mr. Morse's testimony, we're delighted to have the witnesses answer those questions, but this is not the time of the hearing for final arguments.
Okay,
You there? Do you have any
I
questions?
just want to say,
Yeah,
you
go ahead.
folks don't want to hear it, but if this was in the city, they call this zoning creep.
If it was where, I didn't hear your comments. If it
This
was
was in the city, they call this zoning creep.
zoning creep, okay.
Thank you for your time.
Okay, good. We'll look forward to hearing from you at the next hearing, which should be our last hearing, and you'll have a full opportunity to be heard. So thank you very much for attending tonight. Is there anybody else who has their hand raised? Who wants
There
to-
is not, no.
Okay, so then without further ado, by agreement of all of the parties, we're going to continue this hearing to Tuesday, February 27th at 7 p.m. And it's our hope and expectation that this will be the final evidentiary hearing on this particular application, and we'll hear the closing position of Mrs. McGetrick and any member of the town administration that wants to be heard, as well as any affected resident who wishes to be heard. So if there's nothing further to come before the board, thank you all for your attendance. See you on the 27th, and hopefully we'll be able to conclude this hearing at that time.
Thank you very much.
Have a great night, everyone.
Thank you. Good
Thank you.
night.
Good
Right.
evening.
Thanks.